Hello team, in this particular diet what we'll be doing is that we'll be trying to explain the budget and evaluations. Okay, so different types of management style. Okay, so different type of control, right? So different types of ways of evaluation of performance. Okay, so basically budgets are used for evaluations, right? So analyzing whether they have basically met with the variance or not. So how much is the variance, right? So actual versus budget, right? And if you hit a budget, you've done well, and miss it, then you are in trouble, right? So it's uh, it's seen like that. However, proper evaluation requires care. Okay, it requires care, as performance might not be controllable, and indeed budget could have been or could become incorrect. Okay, so even the budget itself could have been incorrect, right? Next thing, Hopwood, a very genius person, has suggested three approaches to the use of budget information by managers in performance evaluation. Whenever you are doing a performance evaluations, there are three different approaches to the use of budget information, right? So three approaches for doing what, to uh, evaluating performance. Okay, so to evaluating performance, so there is three different approach. So one is, first is what, budget constraint style. Okay, budget constraint style. Second is profit conscious. Third is non-accounting style. So in budget constraint style, the cost overrun or revenue shortfall is always bad, and it's always the subordinate's fault, right? It's always the subordinate fault, whichever any in the hierarchy, whoever is below, it's their fault, right? So even though if the subordinate had spent proper time for a good reason, for example, to appease very important customers who had poor service, right, in the past, right, so that expenditure would be criticized. Expenditure would be criticized, even though it may have led to a customer being retained, right? This approach leads to a very bad relationship between superior and subordinate, and it can also lead to misreporting, right? So they are being pressured to meet the budget, but even though they are doing their actions, there might be some, they are doing it for the good, right? So they are doing it just to retain the customer who had a bad service, but that would be, the expenditure would be scrutinized, or they would be what, expenditure would be termed as not required, right? So it was unnecessary. Next thing is profit conscious. It's more about long term profitability. Okay, long term profitability, long term performance are important. Cost overruns in the short term are tolerated, right, for the sake of long term, right? So this is probably most of us would like to be, this is how most of us would like to be managed, right? Next thing, accounting style. So manager is not particularly interested in budgets or accounting, not even accounting, not even budgets, right? At this stage, the at this stage, at one stage, this approach would be found in many hospitals in UK. Treatments were relatively basic, cheap, and expenditures did not have to be watched, right? Now, with more expensive treatments and aging population, financial budgets have become more popular or important, right? So this is another non-accounting style, which is like it does not look at budgets or accounting anything, right? It's more about non-financial indicators. Okay, it's more focused on delivering those non-financial indicators. So financial indicators, right? This thing is about long term. Okay, profit conscious style is more about long term. So that's pretty much it in terms of budgeting and its evaluation. Okay, so these three things we need to remember always is budget constraint style. It's basically cost overruns versus shortfalls, and then it encourages, it always says that it's always the subordinate's fault. It encourages misreportation, right? And then it does not justify, or it does not allow for expenditure which could be value adding, right? Next thing, for profit conscious, the cost overruns are tolerated, and basically in the view of long term. Okay, in the view of long term. So this is also another point I wanted to point out is short-termism. Okay, in budget constraint style, it's more about short-term because budgets are normally for 1 year, right? So they encourage short-termism. Okay, in terms of profit conscious, even though it's you're implementing a certain project and then the cash flow is down the line after 3 years, then also it's good way it's a good way of managing. Okay, so whenever you're evaluating budgets, so profit conscious style is a good way to tolerate because you will need some cash cost overrun happening in the previous year in the beginning of the project so that we can reap the benefits later on, right? So in the overall long term it looks like the performance is good for the organization, right? So that should be approach, right? Next thing, non-accounting is basically more around not looking at the budgets or accounting or anything. It's more about delivering on the objectives. So this could be it's traditionally used in basically this not-for-profit organizations, right? So it's not about costs, but it's about uh, delivering different objectives, different such as post office, right? So the post office has to deliver mail even though it's at the rural places, right? So even though if you're looking at the budgets, of course it's going to be it's not going to make sense, right, in that circumstance because it's influenced by social, political, legal factors, right? So you can't really ignore a person who's living in the remote area because you have to deliver that service as well. So that's how we evaluate budgets, right? So this is how we evaluate budget information whenever we are doing a performance evaluation. Okay, so that's it for this video. Take care. Bye bye.